Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Sorry about that. Had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're live and we're going to be talking about the market shifting. So, just so if you can hear me okay, if you guys in the chat wouldn't mind letting me know you're in the chat. We're flying solo tonight, and so hopefully everybody's having a nice evening. And we're going to talk about the change in the real estate market. So, what I'm seeing is a little bit of a shift. Okay. Now, when we say a shift, now that does that mean we're going into a full-blown buyer's market? No, not at all. So um, just keep that in mind. But I think if you're a seller, or what you're starting to see is a more return to a more normal market. Okay. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. I don't have any articles, but I wanted to just kind of do a little chatting a little bit. And it looks like Clark is in the house. All right, Clark. Well, thanks for joining the stream. So awesome. I think if you're we're going to talk a little bit about on the seller side, and then I'm going to share some past experiences and tell a few stories, and hopefully you'll enjoy that, and we'll find out. But I think if you're a seller, you might need to start adjusting your expectations a little bit. What you're starting to see, and I've just seen this in the past couple of weeks, and I've spoke with a couple of agents who've also been seeing the same thing. And if you're an agent that's in our marketplace, if you don't mind chiming in, um, sharing your thoughts in the chat, I'd appreciate it. And I know Clark is from Atlanta, Georgia, and Clark is in seeing a shift in the market. And usually, what usually happens is you'll see things happen along the coast and then work their way inward to the Midwest. So we're usually a little bit later to the party. So, but I do think if you're a seller, you have to adjust your expectations a little bit. So this is not the pandemic market where you're getting 15 offers, you're selling a home for $60,000 over list price, and that sort of thing. But again, every market's going to be different. And then I think what you're also starting to see is a return to um, a normal market where you're starting to see seller concessions. Okay, and that is where uh, you might have a home listed for, let's say, $300,000, and the buyer might need some help with closing costs. And for many, many years, it was not unusual for the buyer to ask the seller to pay some of their closing costs. Well, in the past 5 years, that's gone completely away because of kind of the insane seller's market that we're in. But you're starting to see a return to that. And then the other thing, and Clark says, yes, there's a shift happening here down here in Atlanta. Okay, excellent. Um, and the other thing I'm starting to notice, and let me know if you notice this as well, you're starting to see more directional arrows. Okay, and directional arrows are where those little signs at the corner of the street corner, where it'll say, "Hey, home is listed this way." So I'm starting to see a lot more uh, directional arrows in different neighborhoods and that sort of thing. And then the other thing that I've noticed too, and that is in a shifting market, agents will start calling other agents and ask you, hey, are you getting a lot of showings on your listing? And they're starting to ask more activity questions like, hey, I see that home went under contract. How many showings did you get? Things like that, in order to kind of get a feel for the marketplace. So uh, that's something that I'm seeing as well. So, um, and Clark says, yep, I'm seeing that down here with the directional arrows. Exactly. So, um, for so many years we were so spoiled because the home would sell so quick. Uh, you'd put the sign in the yard and boom, it would sell instantaneously. So, um, and then let's see. And yep, we're doing calling down here too. So agents are doing that because it's like, well, then you can kind of get a feel for what's going on in the market. And then I just wanted to kind of bring up, I got some notes, so I'm going to refer down to my notes here. And then Um, and I wanted to kind of talk about when somebody, a lot of sellers may not realize this, but when somebody writes an offer and you counter, let's say a buyer writes an offer to purchase on a property and you counter that offer 1 penny, that buyer can walk away. So when you counter an offer, you got to be prepared to lose that deal. Okay. And there's a saying that goes like this: in the stock market, you'll hear bears make money and bulls make money and hogs get slaughtered. So you got to be really careful about if something comes across, and if you're a seller and it's going to accomplish your goals, you got to be kind of careful about turning that offer away. And I got a story to go along with that. Hey, we got James Clark is in the house. All right, James, it's good seeing you. Thanks for stopping by. Awesome. But I wanted to tell a little story about, it's kind of my raccoon house story. Okay. I had a listing around the 84th and Center area, and I'll kind of show you on the map where this thing is located. Okay. 84th and Center area is, it's in West Side. It's a really nice area. I don't know if you can see I can't really see my cursor very well, but anyway, it's just west of the cemetery here. Okay. And it was on 81st and Arbor. Okay. And this was a house to where the owner was out of town, an out of state owner. Okay. And it was an investment property. She was a past client of mine that I've helped with a couple different transactions on. And she hadn't invested. She had a renter in this thing, and he was a hoarder, and the house was just destroyed. Okay. And I don't know if he was actually living in the house because the furnace wasn't functional. There was no heat to the thing. I think he was just using it as storage. And it took 6 months to get this guy out of the place. Okay. And it was all involved. We had to get a constable, and the seller's attorney was involved, and they had to evict this guy, and it took quite a while to get this guy out. And then we had to get the place cleaned up, and that wasn't for the faint of heart too. And the seller, meantime, was out of town, so I was help coordinating all this stuff. So we got the cleaners out there and cleaned it all up. Okay. And I think they spent, and they cleaned up the yard too, and it looked presentable. I mean, as much as you can get a hoarder's house presentable, it was presentable. Okay. So, but this thing, everything was wrong with this thing. I mean, the furnace, it even had a hole in the roof, had a hole in it completely. You could look up and see the sky from, there was obviously a hole in the roof. So it was a few years ago. So it was a seller's market. We got it all cleaned up. Okay. And I think 6 or 7 dumpsters, 6 guys working 2 days, got it all cleaned up, and tore the carpet out because it was just nasty. After you was inside the house, you wanted to burn your clothes. But this thing was cleaned up pretty well. So we put it on the market, and my thought process was, okay, let's put it at 175. And the seller, sellers are sellers, and they always want to get as much as possible, which I understand. And the seller wanted to put it at 180, so we ended up putting it at 180. But here's the thing about the market determines the price. If you put a house out there for 180 and it's truly worth 220, guess what? The market's going to find that price. And likewise, if it's not worth 180, the market's going to find that as well, because you're going to get that exposure. But anyway, we put it out there for 180. Okay. And lo and behold, we got an offer for 160 cash. Okay. And no inspection. and the seller was, but it was right away, right when the home was listed, boom, we got an offer for 160. And guess what? The seller was having none of it. The seller said, no, 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 no. We can get more than that. I don't want to accept that offer. I don't want to give it away. Okay, those are famous last words. Okay, so the seller was like, okay, so turn down that offer. But here's the other lesson too. If you're a seller, sometimes that first offer is the best offer. So the seller turned it down. And here's the thing. Your agent can give you advice, but you don't have to take that advice. Okay. So the seller turned it down. Well, then the home sat on the market, and homes sitting on the market are kind of like donuts. Okay. The best time to eat a donut is when it's fresh on the market. Okay. And then when it's sitting around in the break room and it's that last donut and it's a cake donut and it's nasty, the only person probably is going to eat it would be me. Okay. So, but the then it sat around. And now, a few years ago, a home sitting on the market for 7 days, that might as well have been an eternity. So the seller thought, well, you know what? I'm going to put a new roof on it. Okay. But here's the thing. A roof is a maintenance item. A roof will help it sell faster, but it's not necessarily going to get you more money. So the seller decided, well, I'm going to put a new roof on it because it obviously needs a new roof. Well, that's where the raccoons come in, because the raccoons were using this hole in the roof to just go in, live, and then go out through the day. And then one time we had a showing where the agent called me and said, hey, we have some sort of animal living in the rafters or whatnot. And so we had to get critter control and all that sort of thing to get rid of these raccoons. So we put on a new roof. The seller turned down that, then the home got stale on the market. And then we ended up selling it for $140 cash after we put on that new roof. So instead of selling it for $160 and getting it sold, the seller was like, she regretted it. I mean, but it's like, hey, lessons learned. But sometimes you don't learn that lesson until it's too late. But that's just something I wanted to share with you. So that ended up being a $30,000 lesson for that seller. And you can overprice a home in any market, even in a seller's market, an extreme seller's market like we were in. But again, the market will find that price. If it was truly worth more, it'll sell for more. Okay. Let's see. We got a couple more comments here. James says, I've seen Nebraska is the cheapest state to buy land. Can you verify this? I don't know about that, Clark, or James, I mainly stick to Douglas and Sarpy County, and that's something, buddy, that I want to have on. We have a sister company that does land in western Nebraska and across the Midwest. And so I can't really speak with any certainty in terms of land. And I know around Omaha, it's actually pretty expensive because that farm ground is valuable. So I don't think it's as cheap as folks may seem. That's my initial gut with that, but I'd have to confirm with that. And I want to have somebody from our land division as a guest, because that's something I don't even know what I don't know about that. Okay. And then let's see, Clark says, wow, people got to learn not to be greedy sometimes. Yep. And that's a tough lesson, because folks are going to be, and I understand you want to get as much money as possible. Okay. And the tendency is to think, well, let's see, there are some deals in South Dakota, but you got to live in South Dakota. Yep. True. I heard the taxes are pretty easy in South Dakota. They get some more tourism with the Black Hills and everything. So I don't know about that. I had a client one time go to South Dakota after she sold her place. And yes, people don't want to take our advice, but they want to hire a professional. Yep, that's true. Yep. Hey, Fred is in the house. All right. Hey, Mr. Matt, no crazy jokes tonight. I'm just tired. So till Thursday. All right. Fred, thank you very much for stopping by. All right. Terrific. All right. Awesome. And then MOH property taxes on the high side, no state income tax. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. We have state income tax and we have high property taxes. Okay. So that's a couple things there. The other thing I want to talk about are in my notes, and that is you want to price on a major break point. Okay. Um, I wanted to price that home at 175 because that's a major break point. Okay. But, and the reason why, and I'll use a different example, and that is, let's say you have a home around um, 299,000, 300,000 ish. Okay. It's much better to price that home right at $300,000. And there's a tendency out there to say, no, I want to price it at 299. But hear me out on this. If you price it right at 300,000, you're actually going to get more exposure because you're going to pick up the folks looking from 300 to 350, and you're also going to pick up the folks that are looking from 250 to 300. If you price it at 299, then what you're doing is you're going to be invisible online to anybody looking from 300 to 350. So you can double your exposure by pricing it on a major break point. Okay. Um, I used to work expired listings. Okay. During the Great Recession, 20% of the homes that were listed expired. Okay. And that means they didn't sell the first time around. So what I would do is I would prospect expired listings. Well, there was this little tiny condo, and this price seems really, really low because it is really low, but this was a while back. But they priced it at 89.9 and the listing had expired. Okay. Well, I contacted the gentleman after the listing expired and met with him, and I said, "Hey, I want to um, raise the price $100, okay, to where it was $90,000, because back in those days, $5,000 increments meant a lot, but we raised it just now. Some of this is going to be luck, but we raised it $100, and we sold. He previously had it on the market for 6 months, and then we raised the price $100 to where we was on a major break point to 90, and then it sold 4 days later. So some of that could have been luck, but um, you I think it's important that when you're listing or selling your home, pricing it on that major break point. So hopefully that helps you out um, if you're if you're selling a property. And then I want to talk about uh, staging and getting the home ready for the market. Okay. I believe in staging in any market, even during a seller's market, because the better that home looks, you're in competition no matter what. The better that home looks, the more money you're going to make. And then if you look at a model home, builders, if you look at, go to a model home, um, if you look at, a builder, and I'm just going to take, for example, Celebrity Homes, you go out and look at their model. Now, if you have an agent, don't go to a model complex without your agent with you on your first visit. Okay. So, but if you go to a model complex with your agent on your first visit, you look at those models that they have, they're decked out. Okay. And think about it. Builders believe in staging, and builders obviously want to make as much money as possible. So if they are willing to stage that home, then there's value in staging. Okay. And then that's going to make the home, the photography look so much better, and that sort of thing. And I had a rental property and I sold it a couple years back, and it was in North Omaha for $175,000, and it was vacant. And my stager, I had her stage it with, I rented furniture. It cost me a couple thousand, I think it was like $1,800 to rent the furniture, but it made the photos look so much better. Okay. Um, let's see here. Let's see. James says, in your experience, do you have a lot of bidding wars? I mean, we do. Okay. I just have a couple that are closing this month, and one of them had 2 offers on it. One of them had 8. Um, and then, but if a home is priced right, and it's staged, it'll still get multiple offers in some price points. Now, other price points, you might only get 1 offer, and there might be a little give on that price, but the market is starting to cool off. Okay. Um, Clark, how do you feel about virtual staging? That's a good question. I have a tendency to, um, I'm not really a fan because sometimes it looks fake. It'll probably get better as time goes by, but to some of those photos, it just kind of looks fake to me. So I'm not really a fan of virtual staging yet, but I can see where it's getting better. Clark, what do you think about virtual staging? How do you feel about it? Or if you're in the chat, how do you feel about virtual staging in the chat? What's your thought process on that? I don't know how to do a poll on my chat, but um, anybody else have any thoughts on virtual staging? I'm not there yet because to me it's just doesn't look quite as good yet. But I've seen where it got better. Okay. Um, but I'm a huge fan of staging and then professional photography because your first showing is online. Okay. Um, and then when you price your home, okay, and we're talking a little bit about pricing the property correctly. When you price the home, you actually have to sell it to 5 people. Okay. The buyer has to be happy with the price. The seller has to be happy with the price. Both agents have to be happy with the price. And then finally, the other person that gets a vote is the appraiser. So if you overprice the property, even if buyer and seller agree on price and it's being financed, you have to have the home appraised. So it's always about terms. Okay, Clark agrees with me. He's not a fan of it either. Yeah, but Clark, have you seen how virtual staging has improved though? I mean, I've seen where it looks like it's gotten better, but I'm just not. I'm not there yet. And then the other thing too, with actual staging where they've brought furniture in, um, it just when you walk in the home, you can tell there's a difference. And then if you're a seller and let's say you're relocating to another state before, and let's say the home is going to be vacant, have the stager come out before you pack up all your belongings and take the photos while the furniture is in there. And then if you do have to bring all your belongings, then you can take the things out of the house. But I'm a big fan of, I think it just shows so much better with the, furniture in the home. That's me. So, and I think it stands to reason. Okay. And then when talking about the appraisal, it's always about terms. Everybody gets focused on price. Okay. But it's really about terms because let's say I offered you $1 million for your home. Okay, that's great. That would be like, wow, I'm taking that deal. But I guarantee you won't take that deal because what if I said the terms, and this is being facetious here, but what if I say the terms were $1 for the next million years? Those are not good terms. So it's always about terms. It's never about price. Okay, so Clark says in terms of virtual staging, yes, it's gotten better, but some people still have a hard time seeing the furniture in the space. outside of the virtual staging. I agree completely. Yep. Um, Furniture showing for rental property. This was MOH. This was a rental property that I was selling. So it was vacant. The renter trashed it. So I had to get it all cleaned up. And then I got it all cleaned up. Then I had the furniture rented for the photos and for the staging. But, I think, quality photos, even if it's for a rental property, if it's an Airbnb, I mean, you're going to have furniture in there anyway, but I think for rental property, if you stage it, I think it's going to show that much better. So that's going to show a little bit more pride of ownership. So I can see that. I don't think renting, that's a little. Always becomes a math equation on that. So, and then, so we talked about terms, and then the agent's job is to bring you an offer. You decide whether it sells or not. Okay. And the agent can give you advice, but sometimes folks don't take that advice. You decide whether or not it sells or not. Okay. And then I got another story about, maintenance and I want to talk about over improving the home. Okay. Now, these were clients. These were not my YouTube clients. My YouTube clients are my best clients because they watch my videos, and so those are some of my best clients. So, but on this property, this was not a YouTube client, although they might watch the channel still. So I don't know. But anyway, these folks, I helped them sell a property, and this gal was over the top with doing things. I mean, she bought this property, and then she would, whatever she bought, for some reason, she liked to move quickly afterwards. So she bought this property, wasn't really happy with it, sunk a bunch of money into it, and we got it sold. And then they wanted to buy new construction, and they didn't want my assistance with that. So I didn't hear from them. But anyway, lo and behold, I sold their property, and there's a little bit more challenging to work with, but we got it sold and got them a number that they wanted and everything. But they ended up buying an existing home, and then they called me, and about a year later, and they said, "Well, hey, Dave, we want to sell our house," and they started describing all of the things they'd done to it, and I'm like, "Wow, wow, wow, wow!" I'm like, they sunk all this money into it. Okay. And then I looked at it on the assessor's website, and I'm like, it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, split entry they purchased it for $225, and they sunk, get this, $225,000 into this home. They might as well have rebuilt the doggone thing. They just went crazy on this thing. So they had, and then they didn't, then they wanted to move again. Okay. And this is all within about a 3-year time span, all of this. And so they sunk $225,000 into a $225,000 split entry built in 1974. Okay. And they wanted to sell it. And so then I asked them, well, what do you guys want for it? And she's like, well, I want $425. Okay. She wanted $425 for a split entry built in 1974. And of course, this gal went over and above with all of the things she did to this property: new windows, new siding, new roof, new flooring, high-end everything. And they didn't just put any windows in, they put the high-end windows in and everything. Like, they had great taste. But so they sunk all this money into it, and then they were convinced, And I'm like, guys, people that buy $425,000 homes live in $425,000 neighborhoods. Okay. And you can over improve a property. So they clearly over improved this in property, but they were convinced that they didn't. And they were convinced. We priced it at 385, which was way too high, and we didn't get any traffic. And they were disappointed, and they fired me after 3 days. And I was kind of glad that they did. And so then they hired another agent, and this next agent listed it for 365. And then 2 days later, she lowered it to 330. And then 4 days later, I was keeping track of it because I was fired and I was still kind of keeping track of it. Okay. And then she lowered it to 300. And then lo and behold, that thing sold for 312. Okay. But the lesson with that, there's a couple lessons there. Number one, a home is only worth what a buyer's willing to pay for it. And if you over improve the property, that can hurt you. And if you don't live in it long enough, that's going to hurt you. But they called me afterwards, and they kind of said, "Well, Dave, yeah, you were right, But had they priced it competitively from the jump, like let's say they priced it at 300, chances are that thing could have sold for 330 or 340. But just because you sink a whole bunch of money into a house doesn't mean that money is going to come back into it. So hopefully you got something out of that. But let's see what we have here. Clark says, yes, it has gotten better, but some people still, yep. And then let's see. Oh, I showed that one before. I have my own producer, so I need to. The Spencers, I want to buy a house in Bellevue, but I'm priced out of the market. I need the bubble to pop. Okay. Now, that will the bubble pop? How many folks think we're in a bubble and that it's going to pop? I don't think it's going to pop. I think what you're going to see is homes take longer to sell. I think what you're starting to see is prices will level out. Okay. They might come down a tad, but I don't think you're going to see the Spencers. I would be interested to know what do you think it's going to come down to? That's my question. I just don't see it. And I can pull up I'll show you what I got going on here. Okay. I'll share this screen here. Add this to the stage. Okay. This is the median closed sales price for Douglas and Sarpy County. And this is, month to month. Okay. And this is over the past 3 years. I think what you're going to start to see are prices to level out. Now, this is month to month. There's going to be month to month variation. If we look at the 12-month rolling average, then it's going to smooth out that seasonality. Okay. But I think what you're starting to see is prices leveling off. Okay. But here's the other good thing. I think what you're going to see is, even though prices are leveling off, there might be more seller concessions. So somebody might still sell a home for $325,000, but you might get $10,000 in seller concessions. So I think it's going to be, it's a better position to be in a buyer now than it was 2 years ago. But I don't know, the Spencers, I don't know if you're going to see the market pop like you would like it to. So I don't see that. But here's the other thing too. Nobody has a crystal ball. Now, can every market, if we drag this out to 5 years, let's look at 10 years, okay? And you can see back in 2015, the median closed sales price was $158,000, which to me is mind-boggling. But guess what? At that time, that was market value, okay? But if you look at monthly, you see how there's peaks, and you see how these peaks are in the summer months, July, June, see how those peaks are? That's because the biggest homes sell during the summer months because people want to time that move around their families. So the bigger homes are usually the homes with families. That's why you see sales peak in June because those are the larger homes selling. So, but I think what you're seeing here is you're seeing prices leveling off. Okay. But if here's the deal, if rates come down, if mortgage interest rates come down, I think you're going to see, but that's going to give you more affordability, better terms, and you're going to see more buyers come off the sideline. And I think as time goes by, unfortunately, I think this is going to take a lot of time for this to unravel. We got to, for wages to increase. Okay, that doesn't happen overnight, but I think be patient. Be patient, Spencer's. Now here's the other thing too. Guess what? There is available, and you're in Bellevue, and you can keep an eye out for this, and that is a VA loan assumption. Okay, but for every gimme, there's a gotcha. A VA loan assumption is where you can assume, and a non-veteran can assume a VA loan. So I don't know, Spencer's, if you're down there in Bellevue, if you are a veteran or not, but the problem with an assumption is you have to have the difference between the purchase price and the loan amount in cash in order to assume that loan. So if you don't have cash, I would say this: save up your money, and hopefully rates come down and affordability will return. But that might, be careful about that because then you could have prices take off again. Okay, so hopefully the Spencer's that you'll be able to buy a home soon. But I wouldn't bank on the market popping. But hey, if it does and you buy a home, then hey, you can come back to the stream and tell me I was wrong. So, all right, let's see what James says. With the invention of AI, do you think that virtual staging will get better? Absolutely, 100%. I do. I think it's, I think that will improve virtual staging. But then here's the problem with that, and that is when people feel that something is fake, then there's a little bit hesitant about that as well. So they had some sort of, a few years ago, there was some style of, I don't forgot the style of photography it was, but it kind of had a weird finish to it, and it just kind of looked kind of goofy, and it wasn't well received. But who knows? It might get so good that you can't tell, but there's probably going to have to be a disclosure with that it's virtually staged. So good question. All right. Let's see. And a lot of times, going back to, we'll go back to this right here. The market sets the price. Okay. Because a lot of sellers, I want room for wiggle room. But here's the thing. Let's say the true value of that home. Let's say you list a home for $290. Okay. The market will determine if that home is a good value, and the market sees that, and it'll get bid up. If it's truly worth more than that, guess what'll happen? The market will sort that out. Agents don't set the price. The market does. I've heard a lot of videos online, and I see where agents are manipulating the market. Now there's a little bit of truth to that in some aspects, because sometimes what'll happen is you'll have a home listed and it's not selling. So what an agent will do, it'll cancel the listing and then restart the listing. Okay. That's manipulation because they're resetting the clock and showing it up as a new listing when it's really not. But in terms of manipulating prices, and I hope I don't make anybody upset, but agents can't manipulate the market to, the market sets the price, not the agents. Okay, so Clark says hit the like button, everybody. All right, terrific. All right, so let's see here, going on to my notes. Now let's talk about it from a buyer's standpoint. Okay, in a buyer's standpoint, just talk a little bit about um, from the buyer side. Okay, as a buyer, you have to educate yourself in the market. And you can't educate yourself in the market without seeing a home in person. Looking at homes online is not the same as seeing it in person. Agents are really good. I mean, they hired those professional photographers and they're really good at taking those photos. And then agents are not going to take photos of things that are a detriment. They're trying to put the home in the best light. And you can't smell a home online. Okay, so you got to get out there, and you can't hear traffic noise online. That is something you have to see in person. And really, really good homes get snagged up quickly. So if you're a buyer, you have to educate yourself in the marketplace to where, okay, that way you know what a good value is. If you go out there and look at a home for $300,000 and you look at 10 of them, pretty soon you're going to know, okay, that's a good one and that's not. And that's going to take time on target in order to determine that. So if you're a buyer, you got to go out there and look. You can't just go look at open houses, because open houses are sometimes the ones that are a little bit stale. Okay, so you're not looking at stuff. Sometimes a properly priced home that's well staged, that looks great, that thing will get snagged up quickly, and it still may not make it to an open house. But if you're a buyer, you want to get out there into the marketplace and start looking. Okay. Um, uh, Going back to that, I have another note here, and that is, remember that when we was talking about at certain price points, people expect certain amenities. Okay, like if you're an entry level three, like that house we talked about that was 225,000, 1974 split entry, and you sink a bunch of money into it. Well, guess who you're competing with? You're competing against a brand new celebrity home. So why is somebody going to pay 385 when they can go out and buy a brand spanking new one for 300? So that just and then if you have a home where, if you're at a certain price point and you don't have a 3-car garage, people expect certain amenities at certain price points. So there's certain levels to where you can't push beyond that. So hopefully that makes sense. Now let's say you do overprice your home in a changing market. If you're going to make it a price reduction, you got to make it substantial. Don't lower the price a couple of $1,000s. You want agents to get excited about that, showing that property. Agents love to show properly priced listings. But if you say, oh, we lowered the price $2,000, that's not going to do it. You got to lower it 10,000, or, depends on the price point, but you got to make it substantial. Okay. Let's say you're at 420. You might want to lower that to 400. That way you expose yourself to a new category of buyers, to that 400,000, the 350 to 400. But you want to make that price reduction substantial enough where people are excited about showing that property. Okay, so don't make a lot of sellers. And then if buyers are out there, if they're really out there in the hunt, those buyers are out there stalking properties. If they see successive price reductions, that buyer is going to go, hey, give it a few more days, and they'll lower it again. So don't um, don't make successive price reductions. Make them giant ones that are substantial to recreate that buzz in the market. But you only get that buzz in the market once, and then you've lost it. So anyway, I hope that helps a little bit. And then, talk a little bit about marketing. Okay, the best marketing is a properly priced home. Okay, Again, agents love to show a home that is priced right. Um, Overpriced homes help sell other homes in the neighborhood. When you put a home on the market, you have to look at the immediate competition. Okay. So when you're going to list a property, I'm looking at other homes in the neighborhood and seeing exactly where they're priced. Like um, I had one that was in down in Bellevue, and the other neighbor was priced at 439. Well, guess what? We wanted to slide in there at 435 in order to be the best value in the marketplace. Okay, so you got to be very strategic about that. And the other way you can kind of, if you're a seller, one thing you can do is you can do some of this research on your own. Go to some open houses, go look at some competition and see what you're up against. Okay, I had a seller one time where this guy was an expired listing and he was bound and determined to overprice this thing. And I said, okay, I'm going to show you a house, and I don't want you to look at it. I took him in my car and I drove him over to this house. This was way back in the day when homes were 125,000. So it's a split entry, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage for $125,000. But he insisted on pricing it at 169. Okay, so I took him to a neighbor's house or a home in the same subdivision, and I said, well, what is this home priced at? He's like, you know, I forgot what he said, but I'm like, no, it's 125. And then he goes, well, I have laminate all upstairs. And I'm like, well, that wasn't necessarily a good selling point. But long story short, then we lowered the price to where it should be and the property sold. So when you overprice it, okay, agents will show your home and then you'll help sell somebody else's home in the neighborhood. So don't overprice. Giving yourself wiggle room is just another way to overprice the home. And I talked about this where time is not your ally. The longer it sits on the market, the less likely it'll sell for full price. One of the first things a buyer wants to know is how long has it been on the market? Okay. Let's see. Do you think inspectors overlook things that are wrong with newly constructed homes? I don't necessarily, if a good inspector is going to call balls and strikes, okay. I don't necessarily think that they do. I mean, a lot of times, here's the problem, James. A lot of folks don't do an inspection on a new construction home. And here's the other little caveat to that. And then sometimes if you're closing in, let's say, the dead of winter and the home hasn't been painted yet, and then the home hasn't had the sod installed, but they can still close the home, then how do you know the grading is going to be right until that's done? So there's this technique too, and that is a lot of builders will have a 1-year warranty. There's some buyers out there. What they will do is they'll do the inspection at the 9-month mark, and then have the inspector go through and find any issues. That way, it's still within that 1-year warranty. And here's the other thing too, James, and that is probably the stuff that's going to probably start breaking is probably going to break in year 2. Okay, that's probably why they only have a 1-year warranty. But I think there's a notion out there that all of the new homes nowadays are poorly built and that sort of thing. And I don't tend to buy into that, because I see some things that really make me nervous with older homes. I mean, there's, if you follow the channel, you know how I feel about trees in the front yard, okay, and then old sewer lines. So I don't necessarily think. And then here's the other thing about a home inspection, and that is a home inspection is designed to minimize your risk. It's not going to eliminate it. And then a builder, an inspector can't, you have to maintain the property. Okay. There are some folks that have no clue in terms of home maintenance that, well, it's like, oh, this should be taken care of. Well, hey, we're getting water in the basement. Well, guess what? You got to clean the gutters. So you can't have that downspout right next door to the house. So I don't necessarily think they do. But here's the other thing too. Not all inspectors are created equal. Okay. And sometimes it takes a flashlight. Not all, you want a seasoned inspector. So if you have a good inspector, I don't think you're going to have as many issues on that. So let's go here. Anyone have a ballpark figure for replacing 125 square foot kitchen floor, lower cost materials? That is a great question. I have a hard time saying MH08. That, if anybody in the chat does, I do not. On that. So, Clark, you have any idea on that one? If you're still there, so I don't know. That's a good question. All right. Let's see. We talked about prepping the home. If home, just thought, hey, it doesn't hurt to ask. You never know. Okay. Now, in a shifting market, okay, are you going to be able to get 20%? If you're a buyer, are you going to get 20% off the asking price? Probably not. Okay. And then here's the other thing too about purchasing a home, and that is the perfect home doesn't exist. A 10 out of a 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10 probably is not in your price range. Okay. What you're kind of looking for is at least an 8 out of 10. That way you have 10% you can change, and then 10% you can live with. But the perfect home doesn't exist. And the only way you're going to know, what a 10 out of a 10 is to go out there and see some homes in person. So I know a lot of times some folks are like, well, I don't want to bother the agent. Well, that agent is making good money. They're representing you. It's good to go out there and see homes. So I look at every opportunity to go look at a home as an opportunity to learn. And then I'm always looking around. I'm saying, oh, I can talk about that in a video or something. So Clark says, no, I don't. Okay, so you don't know the price of that either. So, and again, probably difference is in Colorado too, and things like that. In where you're located too. So, now here's the other thing too. If you're if you're out there searching and you come across a home you love, you got to be careful about, okay, you want the best deal, but at the same time, who cares how much money you save if you don't get the home you want? Okay, so if you are out there looking and you look at some homes and you find one that suits your needs, that you really, really like, and if it's priced right, you may not be able to get that unless you pony up. So just keep that in mind. And then the other thing too, when you're out there looking at homes, I like to ask my clients, okay, how would you rate this home on a scale of 1 to 10? Okay. And if you say, hey, this is a 3, then turn around and leave. Don't spend time at a home that right off the bat you're not going to buy, because what you should do is spend that time at homes that you're really interested in. There's sometimes you'll run across folks they'll spend a half hour at a home that they absolutely can't stand. Well, if you're not going to buy it, or if you pull up and you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm buying this thing, then move on. You're not going to hurt the agent's feelings to say, hey, Dave, I'm sorry, this was a bust. I don't want that particular property. Um, be efficient. Spend your time at homes you really like. Okay. Um, Now let's talk about um, what if you have a home to sell and you have to buy? Okay, now that can be really tricky. Okay, now everybody wants to time the move perfectly, but sometimes that's just not going to work out. Okay, and let's say you're selling your home and you have to sell in order to write that next contract. Now you can go looking at homes, but you better not fall in love with one, because if you do, you become a have to seller. You have to sell your home at at a discount in order to move the property quickly. And then in order to get your offer accepted on the buy side, you might have to really pony up to make your offer so good that the buyer is willing to take a, a sale contingency. Okay, so it's kind of one of those things. Selling a home is not convenient. It's not like HGTV where everybody solves all their problems within 20 minutes, and that's kind of like um, it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you might have to come up with an alternative plan, like, okay, hey, can we go into an Airbnb while ours um, is is or we might have to rent for six months or something like that, go into a short-term rental on that sort of thing. And then here's the other thing too, and I've had this happen before, and I might have told this on a stream before, but if you're selling your home and you're going to buy a new home, make sure that you can buy once your home is sold. Because if you sell your home and then you go from a seller to a renter because you didn't. I had a seller one time go. They hired me to sell their home, and then they were like, no, 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 we will have no problem getting approved. No, no problem, no problem. And then, Dave, we're going to buy new construction, so we just want you to sell our house, and we're going to buy new construction. Okay. Well, guess what? They sold their home, and then before they their financing fell through on their new home. So but they insisted upon using their lender, and it was an out-of-state lender, which I know there's folks that do lending all over the country, and that's great. But make sure if you're going to sell that you line up that financing on the buy side, because I felt so bad for them, but they were just, and I tell people that, and but anyway, um, that's I don't know. And some people shouldn't buy. If they can't afford it, then don't buy it. But anyway, hopefully, uh, and then when you're selling your home and buying, that seller who takes a contingency offer, they're going to say, hey, you have 30 days to sell your home. So in order to sell it in that 30 days, you got to price it aggressively. And in the meantime, they're going to do a first right to purchase, which means they're going to keep that home on the active market. And if they get another offer and they accept that offer, then they're going to come back to you and say, hey, you have 48 hours to remove your home sale contingency. Okay. So um, that's um, another thing that you got to be concerned about. So anyway, hopefully you got some. We got some more. Clark says, or James says, James, thank you. I always appreciate it, James, stopping by. I appreciate great information. Okay. Good show tonight. Clark, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Craig Jackson says, depends on what the subfloor requirements are. Okay, cool. Okay. Um, and Emma says the subfloor looks good. Okay. Um, All right, James. All right, everyone, please tell their friends to tune in to the David Show. Okay, and then we're almost at 5,000 subs, so I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, we're solving the tie the floor issue, so we're at subfloor is wood. So we'll see what Craig has to say about that. Craig, just curious where you're tuning in from, if you don't mind me asking. We got 15 people tonight, so that's really, I'm pretty excited about that. So I appreciate everybody who shows up to the show and that sort of thing. Hopefully today is got some value out of that. So I don't know if all right, anybody else out there looking to is currently on looking to purchase right now. If you're looking to purchase, if you're buying a home right now or in the process of buying a home, let me know in the chat. I know some people watching TV, so they can't comment and that sort of thing. But anyway, I appreciate it. We got my market video coming out this week, so that'll be coming up, and I got another one coming out. So, oh, here we go. Let's see what Craig says. For kitchen, they usually put down a matrix mat for tile here in Omaha, Dave. Okay, terrific. Well, thanks, Craig. All right, awesome. All right, everybody. Well, that does it for tonight's stream. Be sure to give this stream a thumbs up, and if you're not subbing to my channel, please do so. It makes me feel good. And I always appreciate everybody tuning in. This is a lot of fun. So anyway, have a great night, and everybody. Oh, we got. Here we go, Fabian. Thank you for the. I'm moving there in a few months. Okay, terrific, excellent. All right, awesome. So, okay, if you need any assistance, my contact information is in the description. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions about anything. If you have an agent helping you out, I'm glad you are welcome to Omaha. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I love Omaha. And then let's see what MOH says. Thanks. Floating floor has been recommended. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm glad everybody can help each other out in the chat. That's awesome. And then Craig says, okay. All right, everybody. Well, hey, I appreciate it. And everybody make it a great week. And I'll see you guys next week. And we'll have some more information and have another great show. So thanks again. Bye-bye.